In this video, I'm going to show you that quantum mechanics cannot be part of a theory of everything. And one of the problems with discussing quantum mechanics with people is that the term quantum mechanics is so bastardized that it means a lot of different things. And what I'm going to do in this video first is I'm going to break down all of this little subsciences that go under the name of quantum mechanics. I'm going to give them new names. For example, one of them is called corpuscular physics. And basically that says that all matter is made up of corpuscular components like electrons and all of these corpuscular structures, assume discrete states, and all that other stuff. No problem with that at all. It just means that matter is composed of corpuscular units. Then if you couple that with probability distribution, this is what I call quantum distribution. We're going to talk about where this is used mostly in a moment. But physicists weren't happy with just probability distribution, so they invented probability superposition, where things can be all the states at the same time, like a cat can both be alive and dead at the same time. And so what you have in that case is you have a zombie mechanics, because a zombie is something that both alive and dead at the same time. So I call this zombie mechanics. Yes, you could call this quantum superposition, and we'll do that later in the video. But essentially, I call this zombie mechanics. These are three very different sciences. Let's talk about corpuscular mechanics. Again, corpuscular mechanics assumes that all matter is made of corpuscular units that all attain discrete corpuscular states. And that's fine. That allows us to think about atoms as constellations of these corpuscular units that attain corpuscular states. Now, this is kind of an obsolete model, and that's fine. We've improved on it in ethereal mechanics, because our model of the electron are two protons, which are smaller charges than the Coulomb charge. And the electron, these spin, so your electric field is generated by one electron spin of these devices, and it's coupled to the other system by the spin. You need the spin in order to have the electric field, and you need the spin in order to couple to the electric field. We're the only science that has done this, to show that the electric field, it is not an intrinsic property of matter. There are no intrinsic properties of matter. All the properties of matter are synthesized. But you will not see that in quantum mechanics or any other physics other than ethereal mechanics at this point. Unless, of course, they're plagiarizing ethereal mechanics. Then we have quantum distribution. And this is used predominantly in semiconductor physics and all kinds of sensors, photonics, etc., etc., etc. But again, all the instruments measuring light are corpuscular in nature. And this is great. We get great success with this. But the problem with this is that probability theory is not causal. It's not deterministic. In other words, probability theory works on the idea that you've measured something in the past, and you're assuming that that's going to occur the same in the future. And because you don't have causality for what occurred in the past, you certainly don't have causality for the future. No, the causality means what caused it to occur, what caused it to be true. And let me give you an example that will drive this point home. There's an old statistic out there that says 95% of the auto accidents happen within 5 miles of home. This doesn't explain why. There's no causality. It only says that this is what has occurred. And what we do is we assume that, well, next year they're going to be this pretty much the same statistic, because we don't think all of the underlying conditions that cause this are going to change. And because we don't know what caused all these accidents to occur mostly within 5 miles of the home in the past, we don't know why the causality is going to occur in the future. And because we have no causality, no cause for why this is true, then scientists will just make up stuff to fill this in. Like, oh yeah, there's a kraken out there that's just going to wait for you to come into your carport. And if you don't make it to your carport, it's just going to crush and smash up your car. Of course, that's complete fantasy. But if you look at what a lot of science was, a lot of it was fantasy. Like the sun god, or that the earth is the center of the universe, all this crap. So until we know the truth, we're going to fill in what we don't know with fantasy. And that is a modern problem with science today. And this occurs when we get to quantum superposition or zombie mechanics, because one of the fantasy things that they have is quantum entanglement. And they have this experiment of the Bell test, and I have a model of that in one of my other videos where I show I get the exact same answer as the experiment, but not with entanglement, with normal physics. Normal physics. But again, they want to believe in this because this will be our communication across the galaxy, yada, yada. It's fantasy. They're filling in the blanks with fantasy. Another one that falls under zombie mechanics is the Stern-Gerlach experiment. I'm going to have a computer simulation of this coming out in the near future, and I'm going to show that they intentionally omitted a third permutation of this experiment, which contradicts the conclusion that they came up with this experiment. It just shows how incompetent physicists are when it comes to interpreting the results of experiments. And again, and this isn't the only ones that fall under superposition, but this one here is this particle wave duality. My friends, the instruments that we look at light with are made of corpuscular matter. So of course, they're going to show that light has a corpuscular nature. So all these scientists have done is they've attributed the corpuscular nature of their instrument to their observation of light. That would be the same thing as viewing the universe through rose-colored glasses and assume that the whole universe is redshifting away from you. And because of this problem, I had to develop an entire rule of acquisition, the instrumentality trap, to explain to people not to get too caught up in what your instruments tell you. Sometimes you have to read between the lines because your instruments are made of corpuscular matter. They're made by faulty people, being interpreted by faulty people. So of course, the probability of getting a faulty understanding of what's going on is not zero. And people say, well, gee, how could all these people be that stupid? Well, Hanlon's razor says, don't ascribe to malice that which can be adequately explained by incompetence. I mean, look how many hundreds of thousands of years we used fire and didn't know what it was until we finally realized it was combustion. Even then, we still don't really know the full what causes combustion. We know that it occurs. We can make the equations balance, but what causes it? We don't know. We have to know more about the atom and the nucleus and all the stuff we still don't know. But then again, the problem with Hanlon's razor is, what if you have evidence that there is malice? And I want to thank Sabine for finally publishing this letter. And one of the physicists, what she did is she made a letter saying, we don't need another big particle thing. We're wasting money on all that stuff. And these people basically were angry at her and said, for example, I'm one of the authors of the so-called blah, blah, blah model, pretty useless stuff, old refurbished crap with a couple of new blows and whistles. But if people buy this crap and it helps them get grants, who cares? So, my friends, science is a scam, too. We have Leering Center, we have Medicaid scams all over the place, and there's no reason why science isn't a scam, too. In fact, some of the papers on global warming are starting to be retracted. I'll let you learn about that on your own. There's another blurb from this. You can read that on your own. So, in conclusion, quantum superposition and quantum distribution cannot be part of a theory of everything because they fail the rules of acquisition. They are non-causal, they're non-local, they fail the mechanism requirements, and so that doesn't mean they're not useful, it just means they can't be part of a theory of everything. And mainstream science is mostly a scam anyway. They have not gotten anywhere in 100 years. And people say, well, how do we have all this technology? And well, technology can progress in spite of science. It usually does. Okay, fire and gunpowder, the wheel were all developed without science. They were developed because people just said, hey, what if I put this together, trial and error, all kinds of ways. Technology can advance and has advanced even if there's not even any science. So don't link technology to science. Technology is people needing to solve problems, and they sometimes can just do it by trial and error or just by accident. Okay, well, there's a billion of us out there. One person's going to get lucky and mix the right two chemicals together, whatever, and find something for something. Technology will progress in spite of science. If the best way to support is become a Patreon member. This is the repository. If you want to learn how to navigate the repository, go to the YouTube site and look at the intro video that explains how to navigate the repository. Oh, here's our little blurb on our standard model. This is the blog info. Great shout out to Sebastian for taking care of this. I will be doubling the amount of time that I'll be able to spend in Ethereum mechanics in the upcoming months, and I'll definitely slot more time for this. Thank you. No more voodoo physics.